Today's webinar is an opportunity to find out more about the program and to ask questions. The Notice of Funding Opportunity is posted and applications can now be submitted. The deadline is April 12th, 2023, and notifications will be made in late December 2023, and projects can begin as soon as January 1st, 2024 or later. A quick introduction before we get started. I'm Mary Macklem. I'm a program officer in the NEH Division of Research Programs, and I am the team lead for the 3 awards for faculty programs, the Hispanic Serving Institutions, Historically Black Colleges and Universities, and Tribal Colleges and Universities. I am a musicologist by training. I've been at NEH for just over 10 years, and I am joined here by 3 of my colleagues. Thank you all so much for attending and helping to answer questions today. Jacob Lusk is the program analyst for the program. Al Nazir Fontenot and Daniel Perry are both grants management specialists at NEH. And I will pass the microphone to each of them to say a word of introduction and a brief note about how they work with the program at NEH. Jacob?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Lusk. I've been at NEH for about 4 years now, and I work closely with the Awards for Faculty program with Mary. If you email our box, I'll often be one of the people responding to your messages. And if you're awarded in this program, I'll be one of the foremost people working with you on your grant. Today, throughout the webinar, I'm going to be monitoring the chat feature in Teams. So if you have any questions as we go along, I'll try to answer them as I can. There's going to be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if you ask a question during the webinar that might be good for everyone to hear an answer to, we may answer it verbally there at the end. Thanks so much for being here, and looking forward to working with you all in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Jacob. How about Al Nazir?
Hello, my name is Al Nasir. I've been working with NEH for about 3 years as a grants management specialist. I work for the Office of Grants Management, where we work in managing these awards. So any questions related to the acceptance forms or compliance, submitting reports, that kind of a thing, we are who responds to those kinds of questions and help on the administrative side of the award. So that is myself and Daniel. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mary.
Great. And Dana, would you like to say hello? Okay, we can hear from.
I'm sorry. I'm Daniel. I do exactly what Al Nazir does.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so and we have our email here for the program. If you write to that email, as Jacob indicated, he will see those emails, and we will see those emails and be able to pass them on to Al Nazir or Daniel if it's a question that they're more equipped to handle. You can also find our contact information for this program in the Notice of Funding Opportunities. So we're always happy to help answer questions or find answers for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And with that, let's move to the next slide. Today, I plan to talk the first part of today's presentation, probably about 35 to 40 minutes. I will give you an overview of the goals and scope of the awards for faculty at HSI's program, discuss eligibility, take a look at additional program details, look at the review criteria, address the contents of your application, and then explain how to submit the application through grants.gov. All applications have to be submitted online through that portal. As I talk, as Jacob indicated, please feel free to type in questions to the chat. We will have a question and answer period where we will all be talking and available to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. You will also see a link on this screen for the program page for the Awards for Faculty at HSI's program. And I will be referring to it throughout. You have lots of resources on there. In fact, everything I talk about today is on that page in some fashion, including the Notice of Funding Opportunity, which is the document I would suggest that you begin with. And the role of the webinar today is to talk you through the notice of funding opportunity this year and to answer any questions you have. So just to take a look first at the goals of the program. This program seeks to strengthen Hispanic serving institutions by encouraging and expanding humanities research opportunities for individual faculty and staff members. Awards support individuals pursuing scholarly research that is of value to humanities scholars, students, or general audiences. And to support faculty and staff at HSIs, the program is designed to be flexible in both project types and award periods. You can apply to do humanities research in support of a wide range of outcomes, such as a book project, institutional goal or interest, or an undergraduate course revision. And you can adapt the NEH work period to fit with your other institutional responsibilities that you may have. So you can apply to work between half-time and full-time on your NEH project or in some combination. I will say more about those details later in the presentation. So taking a look at the scope of the program supports humanities research in all areas of the humanities, regardless of geographic or chronological focus. Projects can be designed for various audiences, as I mentioned in the last slide. Could be for scholars, undergraduate students, or the general public, or perhaps some mixture of those audiences. Please note that this program supports individual researchers. So there is no cost sharing required. There are no indirect costs allowed, and funds go directly to the individual faculty or staff member. Awards support between 2 to 12 months, the full-time equivalent. As I mentioned, you can opt to work part-time. The award amount is $5,000 per full-time month of work and up to $60,000. And that is modified if you are working less than full-time on the award. So let's look at eligibility requirements for the program. All full-time, part-time, adjunct, and retired faculty or staff affiliated with a Hispanic serving institution are eligible. And in the notice of funding opportunity, you can find out more details about this in section C. NEH suggests that you check with staff at your institution to determine whether your university or college is eligible this year and meets the criteria for a Hispanic serving institution. We go by these as defined and determined by the U.S. Department of Education. This determination process by the Department of Education is a yearly process. So each year you need to check. NEH goes by the status of your institution at the time of application. So the deadline, April 12th. And institutions must apply for eligibility determinations yearly. And the Department of Education prepares an Excel sheet called the eligibility matrix every year, showing the results of these determinations. The program is open to U.S. citizens and to foreign nationals who have been living in the U.S. for the 3 years preceding the April 12, 2023 application deadline. No advanced degree is required. However, you may not be currently enrolled in a degree program. So if you are pursuing some sort of degree, then you would have to wait until you're finished with that. The only caveat to that is if you have satisfied all your requirements for the degree. So you've finished your thesis or you've finished all the work that you need to do, and you're just waiting for the conferral of the degree, and that's all done on the deadline, then you can include a letter from the dean of your conferring school or your department chair attesting to your status as of the application deadline. So I mentioned in the last slide about the U.S. Department of Education and how we go by their determinations on establishing institutional eligibility for the Awards for Faculty at HSI's program. I wanted to just give you a sample. This is not a document that NEH prepares, nor are we experts on it, but we utilize it. This is a sample screenshot from the eligibility matrix. They are currently showing the FY 2022, the fiscal year 2022 eligibility matrix. And there's a link at the bottom of the screen to the Department of Ed where you can go and see this whole Excel sheet yourself and look at it. When you look at it, you will see on the bottom, they've changed the way it looks this year a little bit. So on the bottom, you have a range of institutional types. So you would want to click on HSI, and then you would want to look in column J to see, is there a yes? And that would mean that you are eligible. But I just like to reiterate that we urge you to talk with people at your institution who can also advise you on this. And you can also reach out to the Department of Education if you have any questions about that. Again, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, Section C, talks more about this as well. So let's take a little bit of a step back. I talked about the goals and the scope of the Awards for Faculty program. But before we go too much further, I wanted to give you a little bit more context about how NEH defines the humanities. And our definition begins with the agency's founding legislation. The NEH was created by Congress in 1965, along with the NEA, and the humanities fields on this slide come from the National Foundation on the Arts and Humanities Act of 1965. It reads as follows, so it mentions a range of humanities fields, including those listed. The term humanities includes, but is not limited to, the study of the following: language, both modern and classical, linguistics, literature, history, jurisprudence, philosophy, archaeology, comparative religion, ethics, the history, criticism, and theory of the arts, those aspects of social sciences which have humanistic content and employ humanistic methods, and so on. So we go from this definition. It's a very capacious, we have a very capacious understanding of the humanities. And if you have questions whether your project falls within the humanities, by all means, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to talk with you and learn more about your ideas. So looking back again, more specifically at the awards for faculty at HSI's program, I wanted to look at project types. As I mentioned on the beginning slides, a key feature of this program is flexibility in both project types and work plans. So here you can see a listing of 4 kind of categories of project types that you could pursue. If you'll notice, all of these rely on humanities research. So research in in the areas described in the preceding slide: literature, philosophy, history, and so on. And however, the humanities research can support a variety of project goals and outcomes. Like the NEH Fellowships Program, with which some of you may be familiar, this program supports research in primary and secondary materials, leading to the development of books, peer-reviewed articles, digital materials, translations with annotations, and other scholarly resources. However, in addition to those types of projects, this program can support institutional or community goals or interests and draw on institutional or community archival collections, for example. Or projects can improve an existing undergraduate course revision, including the development of humanities resources, for example, oral histories, or identification and preparation of previously unavailable primary sources, or newly compiled historical or literary collections. Please note that this program does not support development of new courses. The course must have been taught previously. And also, only undergraduate course revisions, not graduate, can be supported through this program. Lastly, your humanities research could lead to digital or web-based products intended to supplement one of the types above, so a course revision or a publication project. So a faculty or staff member might collect oral histories to develop scholarly tools like language dictionaries or databases, or to contribute to an undergraduate course revision. Or a faculty or staff member might use the unique archives of your university for a project with an institutional goal or interest. And in recent competitions, for example, the program funded a course revision project on Spanish place names in Colorado. Another example was a scholar working on research and supporting materials for an art exhibition on her campus. And the program has funded translation projects as well as book projects. So I would just say that if you are unsure if your project fits, by all means, we encourage you once again to reach out to us. Our number there is there, or you can email to us and we will get back to you and be happy to talk to you. So to sum up some of the typical activities and products that applicants want to do and can be supported through this program, a wide range of methods and activities can be supported, including archival research in local or distant repositories, collections of oral histories and ethnography. You might be working from a home or university office on editing, writing, and revision. And then to look at the other side of this screen, the print and digital products, the outcome of award support. These are what we typically would see. Undergraduate course revisions could result, as could peer-reviewed articles, monographs, translations, editions, and other interpretive tools. For course revision projects, you might devise a way to disseminate the project more broadly, whether for other course sections on campus or to other universities. And products centered on community or institutional goals might result in other types of print or digital materials. One example might be research and writing of an exhibition catalog for an art or historical exhibit on campus. In fact, that was a sample that we just saw in our recent round of awards. So to give you an idea of some projects that have been funded by this program, here are 3 recent books whose authors received support through this program. The first is authored by Christina Richardson, previously of Queens College, CUNY, and Professor Richardson received 12 months of full-time support for the project. She researched and wrote a book about Roma language and culture in the pre-modern Middle East. The second project is an anthropological study of 2 Brazilian indigenous leaders, Propori and Sabino, Kawawete men whose lives spanned the 20th century when large-scale state projects in Amazonia. And the recipient, Suzanne Oakdale, is a professor at University of New Mexico, and she received 7 months of full-time support. And the last project is by Angela Vergara at California State, Los Angeles. And Professor Vergara used the award to complete a book on the history of unemployment in Chile from the Great Depression through the 1980s. And she received 12 months of full-time support. Given the flexibility of the project types funded in the program, I have not pictured here, but want to just reiterate the possibility of humanities research leading to other types of products, not only book products. Or projects. In recent years, as I mentioned, we've supported a number of projects leading to undergraduate course revisions, peer-reviewed articles, and projects supporting institutional or community goals. If you are interested to see the full range of awards made through this program, there is a link on the program webpage for recently funded projects, and you'll see everything that's been funded through this program. So now let's just take a look at some of the deadlines and dates this year. NEH staff will read and respond to draft narrative and work plans. So I want to bring that to your attention. That's coming up on February 8th. These are optional. Staff will provide you with written feedback, and we endeavor to get these back to you, 7 to 10 days before the formal program deadline in April. As I mentioned, these are optional, but applicants in the past have found them helpful. If you choose to do that, you should do your best to prepare a narrative and work plan according to how these are described in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, and you can find full instructions about the drafts on Section D4. The program deadline is April 12th, 2023. So at that deadline, you'd need to have everything ready and submit it to the grants.gov portal. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And your notification this year will be in December. That's when you would learn that you were or were not funded December 2023. You could start as early as January 1st, 2024, and as late as September 1st, 2025. In other words, there's a large window at which you can begin your award. So here's a slide with the criteria for the program. These criteria appear in section E1 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And we'd advise you to keep these prominently in mind when you're writing your proposal, because all of the peer reviewers, so everything NEH receives goes to peer reviewers who are external to NEH to read and review. And the peer reviewers use these 5 criteria and only these. The first criterion pertains to the intellectual significance of your project for the humanities. And so you should tell your reader why your project, what it's about, and why it's important, how it will change or add to or revise what's understood in your area. And you should write for a humanities generalist because lots of people will potentially read your materials. Therefore, you should also situate the project in the broader context of humanities research and knowledge. The second criterion considers the quality of the conception, definition, organization, and description of your project, as well as your clarity of expression. Peer reviewers generally find a well-written, clear application is a predictor of the quality of the planned publication. So writing a good abstract and narrative is important. Moving on to the third criterion is your plan of work. And I will say a little bit more about a work plan in a moment, but this is what do you propose to do during the award period. And it should clearly state how much support, how much time you are requesting, and whether that's part or full-time support. Criterion 4 asked reviewers to consider the applicant's preparation for the project. If it's a new research area for you, explain how you came to it and what your skills are for doing that. And be sure to address your language competencies, your knowledge of archives, and those kinds of things. And then the last criterion considers the likelihood that the project will be completed, as well as your dissemination and access plans. So if you plan to publish a book or an article, you can mention what venues you might try. You may not know yet which publisher or which journal you are going to go for, but you can still indicate to peer reviewers if you have an idea of where you might look to publish. If you are doing a course revision, there might be other kinds of, when will you offer that course next, and how will the materials be utilized? So let's shift into the area about what do you need to prepare in order to apply for this program. And I have taken a screenshot out of the Notice of Funding Opportunity of all of the pieces of an application for this program. And if you'll see from this table, there's four columns, and it shows you some of them are grants.gov forms. These are, you digitally complete these in grants.gov. And some are attachments that you would write when you're ready to do that. And then you need to save it as a PDF and include it in your application materials. It tells you how to name your files. It tells you in the designation column if this is a required document or if it's recommended at the time of application, or if it is conditionally required. And I would pay special attention to those aspects, because if it is required, you absolutely need to submit that at the time of application. If you do not submit, for example, I don't know, your resume, you forget, it will be considered incomplete, and it will not go through the review process. So it's very important to see if something is required or if it is not required. So also don't submit things that are not asked for, because those are all reasons that your application might not be rejected and might go through review. And then the other column here are page limits. These are also very important to abide by. You'll see the word this year is new. We use the word mandatory, so your narrative can be only 3 pages, no more. If you go over the 3 pages, that can lead to your application also being considered non-responsive, and it would be rejected. So those are details that are really important to be aware of. And I just want to also tell you that if you're wondering what do these things include, the narrative, the work plan, and so on, we do have narrative samples up on the program resource page, and I would encourage you to look at those if you find that useful. We did put 4 new ones up this year, and there is a range of humanities fields for you to look at. Some of those were, written. There are actual applications that were funded. Some of those were written before the formatting was changed in certain ways. So you should always go by the notice of funding opportunity currently available when preparing your application. But just hope that will be helpful to you to see some samples of what other people have done. I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk specifically about a few of the required attachments. Not all of them, we don't have in the interest of time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the narrative today. This is the document which explains your project to reviewers. Your narrative should address 4 areas, and these are described in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, Section D. You'll notice, so significance and contribution, organization and methods, competencies, skills, and access, and final product and dissemination. You'll notice that those follow fairly closely the review criteria for the program. And there's lots of suggestions or guidance in the Notice of Funding Opportunity about what those, what you should include there. Another required attachment for this program that I just wanted to mention a little bit more about today is your work plan. This is a separate attachment. It's attachment 2, and it also is required. This must only be 1 page. You can present it in any format you choose, whether it's a table, whether it's a listing, whether it's in prose or some combination, but it should not go beyond a page. So be sure to be careful with your pages. And you should indicate on this how many months of support you're requesting and whether you propose full or part-time work or a combination thereof. So you can toggle between, full-time during the academic year, part-time during the summer, and back to full-time, or whatever works with your schedule. The only thing to draw your attention to about that is the work plan must be continuous. So you can't work full-time for 4 months and then not work on the NEH project and then for 3 months or something and then go back to it. So it has to be continuous. The other thing to mention here is that your minimum time commitment must be at least half-time. So NEH defines part-time as at least half-time or 50% of your usual load devoted to the NEH project. So this is another listing. It's very similar to the table from the Notice of Funding Opportunity of your attachments for the application. The required attachments are listed there. So I spoke about the narrative and the work plan. The bibliography is a 1-page document and should have primary and secondary sources. And we have more guidance in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Your resume also is described there. I would look at that. It's a 2-page document. And then there's the grants.gov forms that are required as well. Recommended this year, as was last year, is a document called the Confirmation of Institutional Support. This document should come from just confirming that you have institutional support, signed by an institutional representative, so someone in the Office of Sponsored Research, if you have such an office, or a vice president or a dean. And it should indicate that your institution will allow you to accept an award if offered, even though it might reduce your teaching load. So the other thing to mention about this is it's recommended, as you can see. So what does that mean? That just means that NEH encourages you to submit this document when you apply on April 12th. However, if for whatever, it takes time to get this document, you can't get the signature you need or whatever, you do have some wiggle room with this one. It's recommended, but if you are recommended and offered an award, you must submit it before NEH will issue you an award. And you can actually submit that at any time throughout that, but we strongly encourage you to put it in with your application materials. And then the last element there is conditionally required attachments. These are discussed again in the Notice of Funding Opportunities, Section D. And there are specific types of projects where you are required to submit some additional information, such as course revision projects. We have you are required to put in some syllabi and syllabus and things. So I'm not going to go through those in detail today, but just to alert you to that. Also for translation projects, you would want to put a sample in, but you should follow the page numbers and all of that in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And you should not submit anything else that is not required, recommended, or conditionally required. And if you have any questions at all about any of that, please reach out to any one of us. We would be happy to talk with you about it and to answer your questions prior to the deadline. A few things extra to know about. These are all in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, but I mentioned the required grants.gov forms. And just be aware that you would be filling these forms out in the grants.gov website. And you will be asked for a few things that you should have ready to go. One is a 1,000 character abstract of your project and title. And this will appear on the front page of your application, and reviewers will use it to understand the overview. Another thing you will be asked for on the grants.gov forms is contact information for 2 letters of reference. And so you'll enter those in, and then after the application deadline, NEH will send prompts to those referees for letters for you. Whatever email you have entered for those people is the email that NEH uses. So it's important to get the email right. You also should put in the title of the person and the institution, those kinds of things. Just to go back to this point, I mentioned it already talking about application materials, but I just don't want anyone to not understand or not be aware of this, that NEH enforces what's said in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So NEH will not consider applications submitted after the deadline, even 2 minutes after the deadline. So I would urge you to submit your application early so that you can make sure there weren't any technical errors, there weren't any congestion on the web or whatever, so that you can get that proposal, the application materials in. NEH will not consider incomplete, non-responsive, or ineligible applications for funding either. So those words mean different things to us at NEH, but an incomplete proposal if you've missed one of the required attachments, or if you have a 10-page narrative instead of the required mandatory 3. Those things can lead to your application and will lead to the being rejected and not going through review. So we don't want that. So I'm drawing your attention to it now. Then also NEH will not consider applications that exceed page limits or deviate from the formatting instructions. So just take, the Notice of Funding Opportunity and just, it has step-by-step kinds of advice and guidance to help you. So the last little bit before we go to a Q&A session is about how do you submit your application? And at this point, you're probably tired of hearing me say that, well, the Notice of Funding Opportunity will tell you, but it does. And we do try every year to be as clear as we can in that for you, to give you kind of step-by-step way how this works. But first, you need to know that your application must be submitted to grants.gov. It must be submitted online. And in order to use grants.gov, you will need to create a login.gov user account to register and log into grants.gov. In the Notice of Funding Opportunity, there's a link that will help you know exactly how to go about creating a login.gov user account and registering with grants.gov. And then once you've registered with grants.gov, you must create an individual applicant profile in your account. If you haven't set that up as that you are an individual, grants.gov is most used to seeing institutional applications. So applications from a university or a museum or another entity, not from individuals. So this program is a little unusual with regards to that. So you just need to set your profile in grants.gov as individual so that you can put in your own proposal. If you don't do that, you will notice that the apply button that you see on this screenshot won't be red, and you might be thinking, why can't I apply? And that might be the reason. The next thing to just let you know is once you've done all that, and I would urge you to register for grants.gov and the login.gov account. I would even do it today if you have time, or sometime soon, just put it out of your mind so that you can do it and that it's been processed and everything's in order and you can access the system so that you're not trying to do this a week or two before the deadline. It does take grants.gov sometimes a bit of time for this to go through. So I would urge you to do it early as possible. So once you're in grants.gov, you can access the application package through a link on the NEH program resource page, actually, and it will take you into where you need to go. If you take a look at it, be sure to apply to the correct opportunity, and that's what this screenshot shows you. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the Awards for Faculty program has a program for historically Black colleges and universities and tribal colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions. And so you need to apply to the Hispanic serving institutions link. As I mentioned, I would advise you to submit your application early to allow plenty of time for technical problems. For example, if you submit your attachments as .docs instead of PDFs, grants.gov will reject it, and you will need to save your attachments and then resubmit. So you don't want to be encountering this right before the deadline. And the other thing is to watch for emails from grants.gov because they will send you some automated emails saying that, if there's any problems with technical problems with your proposal, they can see that. Things like page numbers and that are checked at a later stage in the application process. And NEH is the agency who will be looking for those kinds of things. But grants.gov will send you some emails to alert you of some basic technical problems. So check. And then the last thing to give you is the grants.gov helpline. They are at 1-800-518-4726. And any questions at all about, creating the individual profile or how do I get to this opportunity or those kinds of things, they should be equipped to help you with. They know their platform very well, so they're a good place to turn to as well. My last slide before we're in the Q&A is resources. These are some kind of summation. I've mentioned a lot of these throughout today, and I have links here, which I hope you can get to through the screen that you're looking at. First off, I would just tell you again to look at the program website on the NEH website, because there you will find all of the resources that I talked about. All of the information covered today is there. The first one I would draw your attention to, of course, is the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And that has all of the details about all of the requirements, the required attachments, page numbers, all of that. Also, what a narrative should include, the kinds of things to consider if you're applying for a course revision project, those kinds of guidance is in there. Sample application narratives also appear on the program webpage, as I mentioned. There's a link for recently funded projects through this program and a frequently asked question document. The next thing to remind you of is to submit a draft narrative and work plan for staff feedback if you wish to. This is optional. You don't have to do that, but we'd be happy as a staff to take a look at it and offer you what feedback we can. if you want to do this, you should follow the Notice of Funding Opportunity guidance on what this should look like. And you need to submit it by February 8th, 2023. If it comes in after that, we're not allowed to look at it. You would submit this to us at our email box at facultyawards@nih.gov. So this goes into the email, it doesn't go into grants.gov. Let's see, what else? Yes, please call us or email us with any questions, and our contact info is there. And lastly, I have linked the Awards for Faculty Terms and Conditions. And this is a document that helps you understand, were you to accept an award, what are some of the requirements and restrictions and so on and so forth. So I hope that those documents and links will help you. And just remember that we're here to help you. We're here to learn about your projects. We're happy to talk with you, and please feel encouraged to reach out to us. Here again is our contact information and our names. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague Jacob to help with your questions and answers today. And we're all going to just have a free, a conversation, and we'll answer your questions. So very happy to hear from you.
Yeah, so we've got a couple questions that have come in, and I also have a list of questions that we get from lots of folks as well. So I'll just be tossing them out there. We've already got a question sort of about the relationship between the individual applicant and the institutional applicant. So I just want to confirm what Mary said, that you will need to create your own personal grants.gov account, and you'll need to apply as an individual. And if you're awarded, the award will be yours as an individual. But now I'll turn this to Daniel and Naz. How are awards paid out? How are the funds actually paid out?
So the funds will be paid to you as an individual. They'll come quarterly. You can elect to have the funds deposited into your account or into your university's account. And a lot of people do have them deposited through the university because it helps them keep fringe benefits and stuff like that. But the university cannot take, there are no indirect costs in this program. So the university can't take a fee or a cut. Everything that you are awarded should come to you.
Great. Sorry, I'm answering questions and taking new ones at the same time. Yeah, so just to confirm, you can route it through the institution, but to answer the person's question specifically, the award still belongs to you, but your award your institution can administer the funds if you'd prefer for them to do it that way, and in fact, a lot of people do. The next question is, how am I allowed to spend the funds? Do I need to propose how I'm going to spend funds in my application, or do I need to do any budgetary reporting after the award? And again, I'll turn that to Naz and Daniel.
Yeah, I'll take this one. You would not need to do any financial reporting. There is no budget associated with HBs or this program specifically. There will be a report for a final performance report. Budgets, again, are not required, and there's no financial reporting required.
This next question is, do projects have to relate to Hispanic culture or history, or have to relate to Hispanic institutions of any sort? The answer to that question is no. This program will fund projects in any area of the humanities that Mary mentioned earlier, anything from literature to philosophy to archaeology and so on. If your project is a community project, of course, then it might pertain a little bit more closely to the institution that you're at. And Mary, are book projects prioritized over course revisions or community projects in this program?
No, so there's no prioritization of project types. The whole idea from our perspective is to offer, to hear from the applicants what kind of humanities research projects you are undertaking on your campuses. in your scholarly work. And therefore, the book projects are just as valued as community research projects, and vice versa. The reviewers use the same review criteria for all projects. So you need to make a very strong case for whatever project you are proposing in those 5 areas. So the humanities, the significance to the humanities, and so on. So that's all I would just remind you as you're writing your narrative for whatever type of outcome that you need to be convincing in those 5 points.
Great. And then, Mary, we're getting a couple questions that I think relate to how do I fit as much information into these small documents as I can. We got a question about the bibliography. We get a lot of questions about a 2-page resume. What tips do you have for people on how to condense everything into the page limits?
Yes, thank you. Those are great questions, and I know it's difficult. We've heard that before, I think, but everybody, on the other hand, everybody is required to follow those same rules and guidance. And so I would say about the bibliography. I've noticed that reviewers like to see a range of sources. Obviously, you can't cite all of the sources for a project, at least probably not. But if you have primary and secondary sources are listed. If you're doing a film project, you might have films on there as I guess your primary sources. So there's all different types of sources you might include. I would recommend that you try to show the full scope of your project through what you select there. I would also say that in your narrative, if you are referring to, you're providing the context for your project, the scholarly context for it. If you have a citation there, probably not a full citation, but you don't need to then replicate that citation in the bibliography if it's clear from the narrative. So just to point that out. And also, if you have your own publications pertain to it, you can save those for your resume document rather than taking up space in the bibliography. Yeah, and in terms of the resume, we give you guidance in the notice of funding opportunity on what kinds of things you should keep in there. We're aware that many faculty resumes are much, or CVs really, are much longer than 2 pages. So we ask for very specific things for the reviewers to be able to see. Things like your education, things like publications, that pertain, especially if they pertain. If you've received previous NEH funding, you would list that and show what the result was. I think it's helpful to indicate language competencies on a CV if it's appropriate to your project, of course, and those kinds of things. But we're also happy to talk with you one-on-one as you work on preparing your proposal. If you have questions, feel free to just reach out.
Mary, I'm sorry if you covered this. I'm trying to answer other questions in the chat, but we did have a question about primary sources versus secondary sources in the bibliography. Is there like a recommended breakdown for how how they should allocate space?
No, I don't think so. I think the sample application narratives give you ideas of the many different ways that applicants have successfully created these documents. Those are not, so therefore there is no way you must do these things. I think it should speak to the project and what your project is about. That would be my suggestion.
We have a couple questions about letters of recommendation. Who would make for the best recommender, the best referees? Who should people ask to write letters, and how are they used in the review?
Do you want to take that, Jacob, or I'm happy to talk about that too?
If you don't mind, there's a few more.
Sure. There's a lot of questions. Okay, and I have to say, Jacob will be departing at about 1:58 or our time because he's doing the another notice of funding opportunity webinar with a different colleague. So, but I'll still be here. We will finish at 2 o'clock or on the hour. But if we haven't gotten to your question, please, we will try to email back with you. But if you don't, get a response, you're also very welcome to write to us. We'd welcome that with your questions following the webinar, and we'll get to those as we can over the next few days. So I'm sorry, the letters of reference. You know, in general, scholars who have taken the time to speak with you about your project, about the current stage of your project, and who have kept up with your work can write very often the stronger letters, perhaps, because they know at what stage you're working. They're not just talking about what you were doing 10 years ago. So I would think that that might be more helpful than someone who maybe has a very recognized name, but has not had the time to keep up with you. I would also recommend that whomever you choose, that you share your proposal with them, and so that they're, you know, up to date about what you're proposing to the NEH for your project. And I think that's some thoughts I had about that.
We've had a couple questions about concurrent applications, and I'd just like to confirm for everyone that you can apply generally to a lot of other NEH programs at the same time that you're applying to the Awards for a Faculty program. There will be, there may be some things that have to be considered if you were to get more than one award. I do want to confirm that you cannot apply to the NEH Fellowships program at the same time that you apply to the Awards for Faculty program. You can't compete concurrently in those programs. And to Naz and Daniel, I think there may also be some restrictions over applying for the same activities in other NEH programs. Do you want to just quickly speak to that?
Yeah, you can't apply for the same, you could apply for the same projects that is in different stages across federal grants or just in the NEH, but you can't apply for the exact same activities across federal grants.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, so if there are some programs that support individual research at NEH, and many of them have an April deadline, and we're there, so you can't, like Jacob mentioned, I would just check the notice of funding opportunity to see the current listing for that, and then just call us if you have any questions.
Yeah, I think I hope that I've answered most or all of the questions that have come into the chat. If we haven't answered any of your questions, please feel free to email us at facultyawards@neh.gov, and we'll be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm looking over my list here to see if there's anything else we could cover. Daniel and Naz, do you just want to quickly talk about full-time and part-time and confirm for folks whether they can do both, whether they can, how that works?
Yeah, sure. I can take that one. Full-time is obviously allowed. Part-time, the minimum is 50%. So these awards are up to 24 months of part-time. So if you worked part-time, you could work up to 24 months. You can work part-time and full-time and schedule out different periods of when you will be doing those, and your payment schedule will be adjusted accordingly depending on how you work that out. It's usually $5,000 per month. So you would get paid typically $15,000 for 4 months if you were full-time, and we adjust it accordingly. But yes, there's many ways you can work with working full-time and part-time, and if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to the Office of Grants Management or your grants management specialist, and we'll be able to assist you in adjusting your schedule.
Thanks, Naz. Okay, I'll just answer one more question, and then Mary, I think we can wrap up. The last question is, what is the rate of success for applicants to this program? And it varies a little bit by year and according to our budget, but generally speaking, around 12 to 13%. And actually last year it was a little bit higher, I believe closer to 15%. So the success rate in this program is a little bit higher than in the regular fellowships program. And as you saw throughout the presentation, this program does have several different types of flexibilities that the general fellowships program does not have. So those are sort of the main things to consider if you're thinking about deciding whether to apply to one program or the other. But yeah, I think that's we've covered everything that everyone wanted to ask. So Mary, I'll turn it back over to you, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jacob. And I know you have to cut out now. And we just really appreciate everybody attending today. I appreciate my colleagues for being here today, Al-Nazir, Daniel, and Jacob. And if any of us can help you with anything as you prepare your project, as you prepare, even if you have questions, we did try to answer most of the questions. We may have overlooked some, so just be in touch on email. If we didn't get to your question or we didn't quite answer it and you still have a question, feel free. That's what this is for, to open a conversation and to tell you about this, and we'll be happy to help how we can. So for that, I will just say thank you again for attending. Thank you to my colleagues, and we hope to see your applications this year. Bye-bye.